Morning auditorium Bible class for Huntsville Church of Christ for January, 28th? 27th? 28th? It's been a week, y'all. They're all running together. I don't even know what day. I know it's Sunday, but I couldn't tell you what the number is in a little bit. And now we're going to pump the brakes for a minute and go a different direction before we jump really into a lot of New Testament stuff, because something weird happens. In the Old Testament, we talked about that the Old Testament uses the word Hosatan, really, which means literally the adversary, for a lot of different things. It's a descriptor. It's an adjective more than it is a proper name. However, when you get to the New Testament, it's capitalized and it becomes a proper name. So I want to try to look at a little bit how that happens, and then I want to look at a few names that the New Testament then attributes to this character, this individual, and start to get a feel for what's going on and how that works. So bear with me. There are a lot of names that are used to describe this individual that is the primary villain that makes it through the rest of the Bible. The biggest one in the New Testament is Satan. As we stated earlier, in the Old Testament, Hosatan is Hebrew. It is a job description. It simply means accuser, adversary. Literally, it's like a cosmic prosecuting attorney. And that, we'll come back to that in just a second, because it's used of more than just this rebel in Eden. Literally, Satan is a transliteration of a Hebrew word. We've talked about this before, that sometimes when the translators are wrestling with something and they don't really know how to translate it, no English word is complete, they'll just make a English word out of the Hebrew word or the Greek word. Baptism is a good example. The Greek word is baptizo, which literally means to immerse or dunk, but they didn't know how to, they knew how. They didn't want it to say that, because most of their churches at the time did not immerse or dunk. And so if you then translate the Bible and everybody else out here reads that it says to immerse or dunk, then they'd have to explain why they didn't immerse or dunk. So they just created a new word, and that way it can mean whatever I want it to mean, because I just created a new word. But that's a rabbit trail. This Satan is a transliteration of the Hebrew word Satan, which, as I said, means adversary, opponent, accuser. It's used in the Old Testament a lot for anyone who is blocking or challenging someone else. Let me give you some examples. Numbers chapter 21. That's the story of Balaam. And we're not going to read it. You can look at it later. But Numbers 21, the story of Balaam. And you know, you remember that story. Balaam is going and he's going to prophesy. And then all of a sudden his donkey stops and talks to him. You remember that story? Well, why does the donkey stop? The angel of the Lord is there. That's what Numbers 21 says, somewhere between 22 and 32. I didn't put down the actual reference. But it says that the angel of the Lord opposes Balaam. And that word, it uses the word Satan for God. So it doesn't just mean evil. It means opposes. Let me give you another example. Joab and Abishai in 2 Samuel 19, verse 22. Joab and Abishai are making things difficult for the king. They oppose the king. Again, the word Satan is used of Joab and Abishai, opposing or making things difficult, causing problems. 1 Kings 11, verse 14 through 25, Solomon is facing political opponents after he is turned from God, and he is opposed. He has adversaries, and that word Satan is once again used. In these are just a couple of examples, but in each of these, the Hebrew Bible calls these figures the Satan because they are acting as adversaries against whoever the person of God is. However, in the New Testament, Satan becomes a proper name, and it will be used 36 times in the New Testament to talk about a specific individual. Let's look at some of those. Matthew 12:26. If Satan drives out Satan, he's divided against himself. How then can his kingdom stand? Luke 11:18. If same situation, but if Satan is divided against himself, how can his kingdom stand? So Satan, we learn from some of this, has a kingdom of some kind, right? I mean, that's what Jesus says. This presumes some sort of ruling status, some sort of dominion somewhere. Mark 4:15. Some people are like seed along the path where the word is sown. As soon as they hear it, Satan comes and takes away the word that was sown in them. Again, acting in an adversarial way against believers or followers of Jesus. So, how did this rebel in Eden get the name Satan? There's a lot of stuff that happens over the centuries between Malachi and Jesus. That's that intertestamental period that we've talked about, Second Temple Jewish literature. You remember that, right? And during that time, this adversary, this divine being who rebels against God in the garden, starts to take shape as they look deeper into the unseen realm, the evil, blah, blah, blah. And as they're looking into that, the Satan becomes Satan. It kind of becomes a label for this character. He is the Satan. He is the adversary. He is the accuser. And what happens is, after you've said it enough, after you've referred to that individual that way enough, it sticks. It becomes his name. Somewhat like if you look back and you know, why is at some point the Baker family had somebody who cooked bread in their lineage. You with me? I don't know. I don't know about Dunn. I don't know how that works, but that's just we were a bunch of mutts probably. But anyway, you get what I'm saying. Once you've referred to somebody enough in that manner, and so if you do it for centuries, it becomes a name. So we're not going to go too much into that, and we're going to circle back, and I'm going to give you a chance to weigh in on this. So pay attention, because at the end of every one of these sections, each name we talk about, I want us to talk about what does this name tell us about this individual. If they're named this, if they're labeled, if he is labeled this, what do we learn from this about his personality, his character, maybe even his goals and ideas? There's an interesting passage in 1 Timothy 3. The last place you would expect to learn something about Satan would be in a description of elders, but it's there. 1 Timothy 3 verse 6 says that an elder must not be a recent convert, or he may become conceited and fall under the same judgment as the devil. So, based on what we know so far, why would Paul offer this advice? Why would Paul say that a recent convert who is placed in a leadership role might fall like the devil? Conceited. Yeah. And that also gives us a clue, not just into Paul's intention, but into something about this divine rebel, this character. That there was something in that, some kind of pride, some kind of self-aggrandizing, some kind of arrogance that caused this fall. The Bible doesn't give us a great deal of specifics about this because, quite frankly, that's not the point. The Bible doesn't go into a lot of backstory and all this stuff, which, that the Bible's the story of God's relationship to mankind. And so it's really not concerned about that as much as it is giving you something about it as we move forward. But pride seems to be a predominant theme. Pride, arrogance. Let's look at two. We've already looked at these before, touched on them briefly. That was kind of cool. I felt like, yeah, I know. It would be cool if I was making a real good point and we had that music. But anyway, in the Old Testament, the prophet Ezekiel takes up an oracle against the king of Tyre. And that's what he's talking about in Ezekiel 28. He's talking directly about the king of Tyre. But he's going to do that thing that we looked at before. We've seen it in Matthew. We've seen it in a number of scriptures. And I call it the bifocal scriptures, where they're talking about one thing here, but they're also talking about something way out there at the same time. Like, remember in Matthew when Jesus is talking about the fall of the temple, and he's telling them, this is coming. Some of you will live to see this. It will happen in your generation. But he's also talking about his second coming at the same time. And so it's kind of a here and there, right? And that's what's happening in Ezekiel 28. He's talking about the king of Tyre, but he's using this rebel of Eden, this devil, this Satan, as an illustration of what's going to happen, of what's happening to this. When Ezekiel preaches against the king of Tyre, he's making allusions to a similar story that goes all the way back to Eden. Look at verse 12 through 14. You were the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Skip down a little bit. You were anointed as a guardian cherub, for so I ordained you. You were on the holy mount of God. You walked among the fiery stones. Obviously, the king of Tyre was not in Eden. The king of Tyre did not walk on the holy mountain of God. So he's switched a little bit here. And most people reading it at that time made the switch with him. You know, you're comparing the king of Tyre to this other character, that there was something there. Later, Ezekiel's going to tell this being had a pride problem similar to the king of Tyre's. Your heart became proud on account of your beauty, and you corrupted your wisdom because of your splendor, verse 17. And so this being is punished. He's expelled from Eden to a new domain, earth, and the underworld. Isaiah is going to do some of the same thing in Isaiah 14. He's going to compare the arrogant, again, king of Babylon, to a particularly ambitious divine being that has fallen from heaven. In Isaiah 14:12, look at verse 13. This character says to himself, I will ascend to the heavens. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the mount of assembly, on the utmost heights of Mount Zaphon. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. This reads like an attempted coup, right? If we're talking about human beings, this sounds like I'm gonna make my throne equal to God's. I'm going to sit enthroned. I'm going to be like the Most High. However, the Bible makes clear that there is only one Most High, hence the name. He has to be the Most High. He is holy. He is set apart. So we learn something about the character here. So let's stop and take a moment, because this word, this Satan that becomes that becomes the name for this individual, this Satan, who is the accuser of the brethren, the adversary, the one who opposes those who would follow God, because of this pride and arrogance that wanted to set himself on the same level with God, and then because of that is cast out into the earth, into the under the earth. Remember, we talked about in Eden that curse when he says you're going to crawl on your belly and eat dirt. Snakes don't eat dirt. So there's something more to that than just telling a snake, I've heard so many preachers postulate about snakes having legs, or they used to stand upright, or all this stuff. And maybe so. I don't know. I wasn't there. But I know that that's another one of those passages that's not just talking about snakes. He's talking about this character, this individual that's behind the temptation of the snake, and you're going to be cast down. And the word that's used there for earth also is used quite frequently in Hebrew for under the earth, for the underworld. It's like a synonym for the Sheol, the place of the dead. So this rebel gets cast down and he sets himself up as, my kingdom is now, I am the Lord of the dead. And so therefore, all these humans that you want, they're all going to die. And so they're all mine, and you can't have them. Now, what are you going to do about that? Now I've set myself up on a throne that is equal to God's, because all these people that he created, all these image bearers that he loves, I'm going to take them, and they're going to be in my realm, and I'm going to own them. And so that sets up the conflict that then plays out finally in Jesus. So Jason is first, but I want us to talk about, what do we learn from the name Satan? What do we learn about the individual? What does that teach us about what we're dealing with now that you know some about that? Let's talk about that for a minute, Jason. It's okay. Right. Uh-huh. Absolutely. Yeah. Right. Right. And that was the point. He's cast out of heaven. He's cast out of the assembly. He's cast out of the holy mountain of God. And so, his if it is a throne, I don't know if it's really a literal throne, or if it's just his kingdom, his dominion. Paul's going to call it. Yeah. He's going to have a dominion. He's going to have a kingdom of some kind that involves the earth.
I don't know if you can answer this.
That's okay. Probably not.
We have in Job,
Mm-hmm.
we have him coming to where God is,
Right.
and making accusations.
Right.
So when did he get cast down after that?
Yeah, that's a good question. The question is, we have him in Job coming before God into the council and making accusations. Now, there's a couple of theories about that, okay? And I don't know. Anybody who tells you they do is just taking one of those theories and holding to it. Job is the oldest book in the Bible. It goes so far back that there's Hebrew in it that we don't fully get because it's so old. So Job was written well before Genesis. Now, does that mean it happened before? No. That means it was written before. And so it's old. The other part is the individual that comes in to make accusations is just called the Satan. It always has the article in front of it. There's never a time when it's just Satan. Every time in Job, that individual is the Satan, the accuser. Again, almost like a job description. So there are some theologians and students of Scripture that theorize that maybe that's not Satan. That maybe that's not the one who was cast out. That maybe, and again, nobody knows, maybe there is somebody whose job it was to roam around the earth and to make accusations. I don't know. Yeah, it's always the Satan. It's the Satan, the accuser. It's never it's never a personal noun. You never talk about the Jeff. You know what I'm saying? And so there's something to that. So it's possible that this is just a divine being whose job it was to go and roam around and again, prosecuting attorney, maybe like a DA or something. His job was to bring the cases of accusation, not necessarily even just those who were bad. Because remember, he didn't bring up Job. God did. He's out there, I'm going to accuse this one, I'm going to accuse that one. So maybe he's bringing in the ones who are acting unrighteously. And God says, hey, have you checked out Job? And he's like, well, yeah, because you won't let anybody touch him. Of course he praises you. I would too, And I'm just the Jeff paraphrase version, but you know what I'm saying. So the truth is nobody knows. Obviously, if it is the Satan, it causes us a lot of confusion because the idea of evil being in the presence of God, the idea of when he was cast down. It is confusing, and the truth is nobody fully understands it. Tim? Right. 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 Very good point. Tim makes the point that that what we read is based on their understanding of the world at that time, and so heaven being above, the Sheol and the realm of the dead being below, that was just based on their understanding of the world. Yeah, well, and the power of the air and all that, there's all this stuff going on, and for us in our scientific mind, when we think of the heavens, we're thinking of the atmosphere, and so you'll get people arguing, well, we've been to space, and what was the Russian cosmonaut? He didn't see God up there. Well, of course you didn't, because that's not what that means, and so. I think you do better to think of it more like the multiple dimensional movies. You know what I mean? The movies where there's another dimension that it's happening and you can't see it, you can't touch it. It's not, but it's at the same time here. And so if you look at it that way, Satan, the Satan, could appear before God, but not be and be in a council. Like the council is said to meet on Mount Hermon, the council is said to appear on Mount Sinai. And so he could be in the council and not be in heaven. Does that make sense? He could be, and he could be coming before God and not be coming into the presence of. Does that make sense? And so, again, boggling our minds, and that's why it's written the way it is, because our little minds start getting into this and short circuit. Gene? Where is God not? That's a good question. Right. Yeah, that God is, if we believe that God is omnipresent, then you're always coming before God. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that you've been transported to some other realm or other location. I buy that. What do you think about the pride and arrogance aspect? There's something there, and I don't know what it is. I'm not looking for a particular answer as much as I'm just making conversation here. But it's repeated over and over and over. This is an integral part of his character, right? I mean, what does he tell Eve? God told you this because he knows if you'll eat of this, you're going to be like him. See, already, even then, he's obsessed with being like God, right? And so we looked at Ezekiel, we looked at Isaiah, and what is he tempting Jesus? that
with powers that show he's God.
right. So it's still that arrogance. It's still that pride. It's still that is a central part of the character of this being. So I don't know. What do we make of that? How does that impact us as believers and as followers of Jesus? Norma? Right. Yes. Yes. God's trying to make us more like him, and Satan's trying to make us more like him. That there's a duality there. Leanne?
Pride and arrogance are one of the great downfalls of people.
Absolutely.
That's kind of like the root of all our troubles.
Right. Pride and arrogance is the root of all our troubles. It's one of the great downfalls. Yeah, I agree. Kara? Yes. Right. Yeah, that the personage of Jesus just blows his mind. That Jesus has all this power. Why would you fast? You have all this ability. I mean, you could turn these rocks into bread. Why wouldn't you? You have the ability to prove that you're God and have all the kingdoms of the earth worship you. Why wouldn't you? I mean, but that pride, that arrogance, that need to be worshiped, lifted up, raised up, that's a central part of that. He knew who Jesus was, and I think also it shows that in that moment, it's blowing his mind as to what the plan is. I know who you are. I know why you're here. Well, no, I know who you are. I know that you're here, but I don't know why. I don't know what the plan is. Why would God be made flesh and come to earth where this is my territory, this is my turf now, I have at you. So if you're going to be a man, let me see if I can get you all the way, and put you under my dominion. I mean, it's really messing him up. What are you doing here? I mean, Paul's going to say later that if the powers of darkness understood what was happening, they would have never crucified Jesus, because that pretty much sealed their fate and undid everything they were trying to do. So let's move on a little bit, because we could be here for a while. But the name Satan is used interchangeably then in the New Testament with devil. That Satan and the devil are used as interchangeably as the same individual, particularly in Revelation 12 and Revelation 20. The Greek word diabolos is that word that's translated devil, literally a title that means slanderer. That it means slanderer. John uses the term followed by the phrase, the father of lies. And the term is used to discuss the devil as being the adversary of Jesus, as the enemy of his work, as trying to oppose whatever Jesus is up to. Matthew 25:41, the devil is cast as a leader of other evil spirits. But I want to hone in on that idea of slanderer and father of lies. Again, what are we learning about the character, about the personage, about this being from that title, from that name? When he is called the devil, he is called the slanderer, the one who is the father of lies. Obviously, we learn he's dishonest, but what in a bigger picture do we learn about that? He wants everybody else to be dishonest. Okay, I buy that. Gene, and then Norma. His chief weapon is words. Okay, yeah, that's what he uses with Jesus.
That's how we counteract. Faith comes by hearing, hearing by the word.
Good point. That's how we counteract. Faith by hearing, hearing by the word. Norma?
I was going to say it's totally opposite
Absolutely. Totally corrupted, totally opposite of God, of Jesus. Kara? He doesn't value truth. Okay, good point. That has no impact. It's more about being lifted up. That's more important than any kind of truth. That truth is relative. Man. So I'm going to tell you this, and I probably shouldn't, but I feel the need to. As we go into 2024, it's going to be an election cycle, and you're going to see a lot of things coming across your social media feed, saying a lot of things about each side. Don't share those. When you're slandering somebody, where do you think that comes from? I'm just saying, oh, well, I don't know. I don't care. I don't care. When you're participating in that, that is coming from this individual. And any of us, I'm just, So, I saw a lot of it in the last 2 election cycles, and I'm like, man, he is having a heyday with this, because we are all buying in hook, line, and sinker. Sorry, mini sermon. You didn't deserve that. I got time. Okay, one of the interesting ones for me, because I'm a nerd, is Beelzebul. You remember that one? That's if you've read the New Testament, Beelzebul. It occurs several places in the New Testament. Translators will attempt to clean it up because they don't like Beelzebul because it's well, we'll get into that. They'll change it to Beelzebub, which is the god of Ekron, Lord of the Flies. But the real name that is in Scripture is Beelzebul with an L, not with a B. Why do they do that? Why would they need to clean it up? Well, a lot of times these scribes, these who were writing these things, these translators, scribes, whatever, if something didn't make sense to them, rather than try to figure out what it meant, they would just make it make sense. So if you're calling him by this name, then it must be they're trying to replace an honorary title with a dishonorable title. The name Beelzebul is basically Baal. You remember the Baal in the Old Testament, B-A-A-L. Baal was a title that meant Lord or Master, okay? And so really the name Beelzebul means something like Lord Baal or Ruler Baal. The idea is that the New Testament connects this idol that plagued the Old Testament, that was plaguing the Israelites all the time, right? Hello? Connecting that to this original rebel of Eden, this darkness, this prince of the power of the air, that's connecting the two of those together. Because in lore, Baal is called the prince of the earth. He is called the prince of the underworld. And so it would make sense that they go ahead and connect those two, that they connect those two in a way that links the Old Testament and the New Testament. That this ancient rebel of Eden, this prince of darkness, whatever you want to call him, has been the one behind all the adversaries that would oppose Israel throughout time. Because Baal, the god, is not really a god, it's an idol. It's a thing. It's not really, he's not real, right? So some spiritual being had to be behind that in some way. Are you with me? And so as the New Testament writers are figuring this out, so what spiritual being could be behind that? Because like I said, the name Baal itself just means Lord. It's just a word. It's attributed to this idol, but it's also attributed to a lot of different things. I'll give you an example. Saul had a son. Saul, not Saul, Paul of Tarsus. Saul, Old Testament king of Israel, had a son named Ishbosheth, right? Do you remember that? You thought your name was bad. Ishbosheth. Well, that's because his name's not Ishbosheth in the Bible. His name is Eshbaal. And you always wondered, why would Saul name his kids such awful names? Well, he didn't. But the writers later had to clean it up because Eshbaal would mean something the Lord of the prince or the Lord. You with me? Whereas Ishbosheth, I don't remember what it means, but it wasn't good. The point is that that word itself is just a word, and so it's not necessarily a bad word. And so when Satan is called Beelzebul, it really means Lord Baal, or, I mean, if you want to get literal, it means Lord, Lord, Master, Master. But it's not really saying he's Lord of all. It's connecting him to that ancient evil, that ancient idol, that Baal that was the adversary of Israel pretty much throughout their time in the Promised Land. Now that fits with the character of this being because we've seen him from Eden on trying to foil whatever God's up to. And even if he doesn't understand why God is bringing this nation back from Egypt to Canaan, it doesn't matter. He's going to find a way to block that. And one of the ways to do that is to seduce them into worshiping him through whatever means necessary, right? So, again, what do we learn about him from that? How he is seducing Israel into worshiping him by using something else. In this case, it's an idol. We can pull that forward and make our own assumptions now about our culture. I'll let you draw those parallels and lines if you want to. I don't want to be responsible for that, but let you think about, what do we learn about him and his tactics from this name, Jason?
Talking about Baal, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, here's my parallel. I see this a lot, and I know Colin, I wish he was here. He's a huge Star Wars fan.
Uh-huh.
Lord, I just looked it up. Like, that name that came up and struck something in my mind that I knew. Lord Baal in Star Wars, the Dark Lord of the Sith,
Uh-huh.
which was a very bad faction of people.
Right.
I see a lot of parallels with Star Wars and Star Wars movies and everything with the Bible.
Yes.
And it just blows my mind. You know, say George Lucas.
Yep.
So he was from Modesto.
Yep.
Modesto was only about 60 miles from where I grew up.
Oh, wow.
I did a lot of fishing in Modesto. But that has nothing to do with it.
Rabbit trail.
It's all right.
Total rabbit trail. But I just find it, that you said parallel, and I just find it very interesting parallel to me.
Absolutely.
There would be the Cohen too, about how scripture, the whole Star Wars and all those movies and everything.
Right.
Has a lot to do with the Bible.
Well, and that's what we're talking about in Ezekiel and Isaiah. They're using parallels to try to explain spiritual things that we don't understand. They're using the king of Tyre to talk about this Satan. They're using the king of Babylon to talk about Satan. Jesus himself did it all the time, would use stories, because our brains are wired to understand story better than we are to understand some of this stuff. And we all understand that, because as we dig into this, we go, whoa, wait a minute, I don't want to talk about this. Let's go back to something that's a little bit easier for me to follow. And so, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. That connection, Jason's making a connection to Star Wars. And that, you know, sometimes that's how we have to do it. We have to find something to help us make sense of it. And whether it's, you know, entertainment or whether it's a story from our life or whatever, we need those illustrative things to help us grasp what we're talking about. What else? What else do we get from this idea of Lord Baal? G?
Well, I think this, you know, his
Right.
So all the fancy words to accompany stuff that's flashing and showing
Right.
that can be used as your
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that it's very much like a sales technique. I'm just restating for some of the folks at home that you know, look at this flashy thing, and if you have this flashy thing, then this is going to be. But we'll also throw in this and this and this, and act now, and supplies are limited, and all these things. I mean, look at all of our advertising. I mean, it's if you drive this car, if you drive this Lincoln, you're going to look like Matthew McConaughey. If you know, if you use this, I mean, and all kind of things. You use, I mean, middle school boys reek of Axe body spray because all the commercials tell them if you spray this all over you, the girls are just going to flock to you. And I mean, whatever it is, that's how we and I mean, that's what he's doing in Eden. That's what he does with Jesus. That's what he does over and over and over. That's his primary tactic. I mean, look. The reason God told you not to do this is not because that you're not going to die. He's worried you're going to be like him. If you eat this, this is going to make you like God. I mean, it's the same thing. Look, this is what you're going to get out of this. And then, man, every temptation. I mean, what does James say? Each one is led away and enticed by his own evil desires. That whatever it is that we think we need, and we get it in our head. If I just had this. If I just had this. I used to have a friend, and he would say, I'll be set. If I just have this, I'll be set. If I just get a new car, I'll be set. If I just get a new house, then I'll be set. If I just get this girl, then I'll be set. If I just get, and it never stops. I mean, he's 53 years old right now, and it's still, if I talk to him, he's still saying, I'll be set. If I just get this much in retirement, if I just get this business to this level, it's always that one thing, and he's never set, ever. He's never happy, he's never contented, and he goes through life miserable because that carrot that he's chasing is always out in front of him. He never ever catches it because it just becomes another carrot. That's a sermon. we can preach that right there. We're running out of time. Anybody else? I don't want to cut anybody off. We're going to pick up here again next week, so don't stress over it. You can ruminate over some of this because we're going to come back to this next week and jump in with some of these other names, the evil one, the ruler of this world, some of those things, and then we'll pick up from there. Thank you for your participation. About 14 minutes, and we'll be back in here for worship. Thank you.